Join me in welcoming Cyndi Recker. Hey, Cyndi, how you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing fantastic. And you?
I'm doing good, thanks. Excited about your book and all the cool things that are happening with this. And the book is called The Cleaner Planet Playbook. But before we jump into your book, tell us just a little bit about you.
Let's see. I call myself by day. I work as a satellite systems engineer. Try to keep people entertained and connected while they're in the air flying. And then I would say by night, I uh, I have a smattering of passions, mostly around health and fitness. So I really try to advocate for people's health. I advocate for my own family's health. And while doing that, I think that we can all take small steps to improve our health while also helping to improve our environment and the planet. It really just takes some small things to get ahead quickly, especially when everyone works together.
Absolutely. So, a cleaner planet, and you talk about the fact that it not only makes for a cleaner environment, but for better health for us. Talk a little bit about that for a second. How does having a cleaner planet help us also live healthier?
So I think in a lot of respects, we have made great technological advancements. I'm part of that, right? I work in engineering towards, let's say better food production, better packaging. I would say improving. Really the quality of life, especially in the U.S., but also in other parts of the world, where there's a lot of pushes for clean water, and again, helping people learn how to grow their own food. But there is a little bit of a downside to some of the technology that has come with some of our modern farming and packaging practices. So one of them is we use a lot of chemicals now in big farming, and so those run off into our water supply. Those impact our health. Many of those things we don't even think about. We spray our agricultural products with a lot of chemicals to keep a lot of pests and also bacteria and fungi away. But we then end up consuming all those. So downstream of that, I think that that's really impacting human health. And then the other big part for me is I really entered this journey of being embarrassed into understanding that we have created a ton of plastic pollution on this body or on this planet, and it impacts our bodies. And the way that it does that is, you may not think that that plastic water bottle laying in the street or floating in the water really impacts you, but it does in a couple of ways. One is it breaks down into microplastics. Um, Fish and other marine life eat those microplastics. We eat those fish. On average, we eat about essentially one credit card a week, which is about 5 grams of plastic. And then there's also a less seen impact of that plastic pollution, and that is plastic leaches chemicals out into our beverages, our foods, and everything else. And so, if we have something stored long term in plastic, and then if that plastic is exposed to heat, things like PFAS chemicals leach out into those plastics, which have now been proven to show that it causes all of these other types of health impacts, anything from, dermatology type issues like eczemas or rashes, right down to hormone disruption, creating different types of long-term illnesses and impacts. It's also been linked to things like hormone disruption that prevents us from having a good metabolism. So it's really like this wide subject that branches out and can create numerous impacts. I mean, even plastic pollution in the ocean can prevent like sea kelps from producing oxygen, which you think, well, does that impact me if I live in the Midwest? It certainly does, because 70% of Earth's oxygen is produced by our 3/4 of surface area of water. So you can go deep in any one of these subjects, and unfortunately, for some of my friends, I tend to do that. So um, that just kind of gives you the highlights for today.
Absolutely. I always think about the every time I drink out of a plastic water bottle, because I walk around with one constantly, I do recycle them. So, you can kind of be happy for me with that one. But, um, it's the concept of in water filtration, because we want the purest water possible, right? We don't want icky tasting water. But in water filtration, they talk about the fact that the cleaner you make the water, the quote unquote hungrier it becomes, meaning that you have to put it in not plastic containers because it will literally, as you said, leach the materials right out of the plastic. Actually, I had a friend of mine that had a bunch of water stored, and she went into the closet or whatever it was stored in, and she said there was water leaked all over the place. And I said, well, what did you have in it? She said, well, I had this water and I ran it through this filtration and blah, blah, blah. And then I put it in those plastic jugs. And I was like, yeah, that's probably why. It literally ate its way out of the jug.
Yeah, and it can. And I love filtered water. We use filtered water here. I like it at any level, whether it's you can even make your own carbon filtration water system from a piece of activated charcoal, which is also like a piece of burnt up coconut, and you can reuse it over and over. And that gets you to some level of degrees, but it's really there is a scale at which you can change the composition of your water. And it's very interesting what you say, because, as you do take things away, the water is going to find another way to absorb things back into it. Yeah, I like inert containers. We tend to have a ton of stainless steel. Around here, my husband also, he loves his plastic water bottles, but now I've got him into a regular rotation, right? Don't store it long term in there. It's good. I mean, plastic's good for on the go. I did hear a funny blurb from a comedy piece on HBO over the weekend, and the comedian was talking about a number of, I would say, oddities in human behavior that have emerged over the last 10 years. But one of them was, he says, and when was it that we all decided that we all had to drink water out of plastic bottles? Which I thought was really kind of amusing, because it's true. If you went in the Wayback Machine and you told your parents or something that, 20 years from now, we're all going to be we're all going to be buying our water in these plastic bottles, and it's going to take, $500 of your budget at a minimum per year to do that, they'd look at us like we were insane.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But tap water in some places isn't the best either. We've heard
Oh.
stories about that. That's why, I'm a huge advocate for water filtration. I love to hear that you do that, Steve. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's the Cleaner Planet Playbook,
yes.
meaning that it's, gives us some instructions and some practical things we can do. They got to get the book in order to learn all of the things, but give us one tip that's something really practical that just the average person could do. And have to go crazy or anything like that. They can just do, and it will make the planet a cleaner and better place to live.
So my favorite go-to right now, which is easy, frictionless, doesn't cost you anything, and works really well, is something called the Ecosia browser. So that's Ecosia, and it's not really a browser; it's just a search engine. So whether you use Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Bing, any of those platforms, if you were to just install this search engine, which works really well, and it doesn't mean you have to give up your Google or anything else that you use. What it does is it plants trees. One thing that sits behind all of these browsers that a lot of people don't know, and especially search engines, and Google is the big one, is that pretty much for every click, there's a transaction, and it's money. It can be fractions of a penny. So the transaction behind the Ecosia browser is that advertisers pay them money for every click. They take that money and they plant trees. So trees are good. It's better if we don't clear our planet of trees, but that's happening rapidly. We don't get quite the efficiency out of replanting, but if you have concerns about climate change, um, carbon in our atmosphere, if that is one of the issues that really speaks to you, I like this because it takes a couple of seconds. You install it on your browser. You can use it on any of your platforms, whether it's a phone, tablet, laptop, or desktop unit, and you can just watch every day. It brings me joy, right? Because it just has a running tab of based on the clicks that they get, the money that they earn, and they put that back into planting trees.
And spell that for us again.
ECOSIA.org.
Love it. All right. Well, there's a new search engine for you to use that is
Yeah, so
probably actually Google with just a face on front of it, really.
so I always, what I like to call it is a way to plant trees without getting your hands dirty.
Or just go out and buy some trees and plant them, I mean, if
Yeah,
you wanna
that's
get your
good
hands
too.
dirty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I do really like the back planting idea, mostly because the downstream effect is, we have better air, which we need. We can only last about 4 minutes without air to breathe, so it's one of those Maslow needs in life.
So a person needs to go to Amazon right now and get the Cleaner Planet Playbook, a guide to being a helpful human on Earth. Um, Give us just kind of a little taste of the journey you're gonna take them on when they get that book.
Okay, so yeah, great question. So in the epilogue, I begin with how I started my journey. Again, I mentioned I got horribly embarrassed after talking to a surfer in Hawaii. Hawaii in 2018 had these like just immense rains, and even homes washed into bays. And I found this rubber buoy, which took me to a surfer art gallery and a long conversation with a guy who, basically schooled me on something called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which, being a technologist and someone who I thought was well read and pretty aware was just shocking to me. And so then I think about, I take you on the journey of really. What are problems and how do you solve them, and give you some easy ways, and why I wrote the book that I did, and that is to basically look at a problem, break it down, and what simple steps can you do. I found that there are 4 areas of your life where you can take these simple steps. One is the food that you eat, body care products, things that you have in your home, and how you live your life. So when you get into the playbook section, which starts after chapter 4, I basically break things down. Oh, are you worried about uh, chemicals that leach into your food? Well, if you are, here's some plays that you can make. And I call it a playbook because I have things that I break down into. You can do things on offense, meaning getting ahead of the problem, or you can do things on defense, meaning protecting you and yourself and your family against certain problems. And I also try to also include some of our furry friends and the how you protect your family, because one of the things that I learned, for example, in your home is that many of your textile covered items in your home, let's say your couch or your carpet, will come with a flame retardant um, embedded in the fibers themselves. And there was something that I learned about called cat wasting syndrome. So if you have a cat, your cat can actually become very ill from new materials that you bring into your house. One way to mitigate that is, if you're going to have new carpet installed, ask that it be stored outside for 3 days before it gets installed. A lot of that stuff outgasses before it ever gets into your home. And then after your home, uh, I'll flip back to body. Ton of body care products. Just because it's in a health food store, grocery store, or somewhere else doesn't mean that it's good for you. Our Food and Drug Administration does not really monitor what's in some of our body care products compared to, let's say, the EU. The US is very far behind in terms of things that we monitor. We monitor like on items on order of 1,000 in the UK, and the EU. I think they um, reject about 11,000 different chemicals that can be put on the body. And then, yeah, it is. And some of those things are in the home too. And then getting down to lifestyle, this is like the super personal choice, in my opinion. For me, I would love to drive an electric car. They are very expensive. I find that for my mission and how I use a car, they're not quite there yet. I live in a climate in the desert southwest with temperatures in the summer over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So even though an electric car may say it has a range of 300 miles, once you have the AC on, that pretty much gets cut in half. I'm kind of looking towards a hybrid space. So I try to treat that with, here's a bunch of different things that you can do with your travel, with your entertainment. where you can make those choices. Again, break it down. You got some offensive things, some defensive things. And I use all those quick hits to basically say, like the Ecosia search engine, if you want to do something fast today, just go do this. Right. And that's really how I'm trying to approach it. You don't have to sell everything, go and live in a yurt in the desert, and become a completely off-grid person. I really, again, believe that it's not going to take a few people doing things perfect. It's going to take millions of us doing them imperfectly, and together, those small steps lead to results. Tons of studies that basically say, how incremental improvement really helps us solve some problems. Then beyond those 4 chapters that have the plays per se, then I launch into a section that basically says, here's a whole group that are doing good, right? If you want to support one of these companies are doing good in the world. Um, they're still out there. They are selling products. They're making money, but just doing it a little bit more sustainably. And I hope for business owners that gives you ideas. I also have a whole section in there for, if you're a parent and you're involved with kids club teams, different things that you can do, different actions that you can take. Again, small things. I look back at when, so I have a college age daughter now. I look back at when she was a child and in grade school, and the school said, "Oh yeah, you need to bring 24 plastic water bottles." I think I would reject that now, and I would either choose to do something else or do it a different way. And then lastly, I launch into my last section because I love small steps, I love patterns, but then I think that my hope is with the whole text itself is that this will inspire you to think about things that are very personal to you, very meaningful to you, and things that you can start doing yourself. I do have a story about a young group of kids that I just talked about with a book in a group setting. And it was one of those where, well, we're going to have this meeting. What can we do to make sure that all of the plates and utensils are compostable and can be reused again? And then what can we do with all of the leftover food? So again, and a lot of times at events, I just watch people just dump food into trash cans. And so no, we took it all up, we gathered it, and we took it down to one of the local food shelters, with a few of the kids. So again, these are small little things, but they build upon one another. And then what I really like about the action of community is that once people watch you doing it, I mean, because sometimes it's like fear of embarrassment or something else. Let's normalize reusing things. Let's normalizing doing things more sustainably, and it's going to catch on.
Absolutely. Well, and one thing you can do right now today, I put the link in the comments. Go and get for free the Cleaner Planet Playbook, a guide to being a helpful human on Earth by Cyndi Recker. Cyndi, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today.
Steve, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.